Since the dawn of human time, the importance of men knowing how to fight has been highlighted in every single successful society. I mean, if you look at Greece, all the men knew how to fight. All the kids knew how to fight. There was wrestling, there was pugil, which is a more ancient version that evolved into what is now known as boxing. If you look at Rome, if you look at the Spartans, they all knew how to fight. Even the Vikings, the reason they conquered so much and the reason they were so feared is because of their ability in combat. Why is this? Don't you see that there's some revolving things in common between all the successful societies? And it's that the men were strong, the men knew how to fight, the men were feared and respected, they were warriors. Men have been characterized by their ability to conquer, to dominate, their ability to be capable in any area, including combat. I mean, think about it. If you go up to a man and he's rich, right? He's very rich. He's a very rich man. But you can still beat the shit out of him and you can't really do anything about it. Are you going to respect him as much? No, obviously not. Whereas if you go up to a man that maybe doesn't have much money, maybe doesn't have much status or much fame, but is a fighter, if you go up to a broke Russian fighter, are you going to fuck with them? No, you're not going to fuck with them. Because being able to fight, having a basis of self-defense, not only makes others respect you, but it makes you respect yourself. And the reality of the world is that things come down to violence. I mean, back then it was very obvious, and that's why every single man, if you were a young man, military age, you knew how to fight, because the population knew that eventually you'd have to go to war to defend them. Eventually they'd have to use you as a pawn to save their city or to save their society. Now, in this pussified era, we've lost that sense of impending violence. But if you really look at it, we've just stacked a bunch of bullshit on top to cover it. I mean, if you don't pay your taxes, what's going to happen? Right, they're going to fine you. Then they're probably going to start taking some of your assets, like your houses, maybe your cars. Maybe after, they'll come search for you, and maybe they'll try and bring you to jail. And what if you say no? What if you refuse to go to jail? Well, then they'll go in your house with guns and with batons, and they'll beat the shit out of you and bring you to jail. Boom, violence. Same thing with a argument. If two men argue, and they're arguing about what burger is better, McDonald's burger or Burger King burger, and those two men are stupid enough to keep arguing over it, eventually, once they get to no conclusion, those two men are going to settle it with fighting. And that's what we've seen. I'm not saying it's smart. I'm not saying you should fight over an argument, but that's the instinct we have. And it's for a reason. So now that you understand the importance the role of fighting has in a man's life, what excuse would you have to not learn to even be half good at it? Why would you want to walk around life? Why would you want to walk around the earth without knowing how to fight? Without knowing, listen, chances are if I'm in a fight and I'm with this guy, I might be able to beat him, right? Because I took, I don't know, years of martial arts classes. Now, I'm not saying that there's not better fighters out there than you or me. Of course there is. But the more you train, the more you separate yourself from the average person. And the stuff that I want to get into isn't even about self-defense. It goes deeper than that. And these, shall I say, are the reasons why you need to learn how to fight. Because I personally can attest to the changes that learning how to fight has made in my personal life. I mean, I went from starting when I was about 16, 17, starting just at the gym, literally punching bag, nothing fancy, to now being 18, knowing how to fight better. And apart from that, I've changed as a person because of it. So without further ado, I'm going to show you what happens when men learn how to fight. Number one, confidence. The first thing I noticed when I started learning how to fight, when I started training, was the increase in confidence that I had. I went from a kid who couldn't really stand up to anyone, was very scared of everyone, and internally was super insecure that if I ever got into an argument or confrontation, I wouldn't be able to stick up for myself, to a kid who could actually look a person in the eyes when they were being spoken to. A kid who actually stuck his chest out when he walked. And I even went as far to to have some fake confidence. I don't know if it's happened to you when you start fighting. I don't know if you've started fighting, but if you have, you probably have that era of like 3 months when you start that you think you're the king of the world and you think you can beat the shit out of anyone because you've taken a few boxing classes. Well, that happened to me, and thank God it didn't have to be tested, but I got off that high horse really quick, which we'll talk about later. But it did give me a lot of confidence. I felt like more of a complete man. I felt like what had been missing for my, confidence to click had been solved. Like, I just need to get better at fighting, because if I get better at fighting, who's gonna fuck with me? What's gonna happen? And obviously, there's more to life than violence. There's more to life than confrontation. But as a 16-year-old kid who had always been very insecure about confrontation and who had been very insecure about violence, this obviously helped. Number 2, mental changes. I started seeing everything in a different light. So, for example, some things that I would find hard, like maybe giving a presentation in school or, doing your homework, I would start comparing them to fighting. So I would think, I have to give this presentation in school, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm pretty nervous about it, but I just sparred yesterday against this dude who's been fighting for 10 years. And I got my ass beat, but I took that, so I think I can take a presentation. I started having these changes to where, compared to fighting, things weren't so scary anymore. I could do them. I was more confident and I was more brave in doing everything. I also started loving challenges more. So it's kind of crazy if you think about it from the outside to think that a young kid would enjoy getting punched for just 2 hours a day. That's really weird. But from the inside, it's not you getting punched that keeps you so addicted to martial arts, to boxing, whatever combat training you're doing. It's the challenge of getting better and knowing that if I get over this, I'll feel that gratification. I'll feel that confidence once again. So I started being able to handle challenges better. I even started to actively look out for them more. And this goes into number 3, which is discipline. I finally understood the concept of discipline. And for me, this was a big thing because before this, I was running based off of motivation. So to put this into perspective, I would watch a bunch of Andrew Tate videos and I would be like, yeah, I need to get rich. And after 20 minutes of doing some work, I'd be like, yeah, fuck this. It's way harder. I don't feel the motivation anymore. Let me stop. Same thing with the gym. And what I realized with discipline is that discipline is doing things when you don't want to do them. And that changed everything for me. Because I would find myself in the gym training martial arts on days that I didn't even want to go. It was just like autopilot. When I wanted to go, I went. And when I didn't want to go, I also went. And no matter how bad the training was, no matter how shit I felt, after I felt great. Because I knew that I had overcome that laziness, that procrastination that I've always had. Which goes into number 4, delayed gratification. What I've found with martial arts, with fighting in general, is that there is no easy way to get better. You have to work so hard, like claw up tooth and nail, to just get 1% better each time you train. It's such a complicated sport. Like a simple combination like a jab cross can take you months to master. Not even to master, just to get okay. I want you to think of that. Would you be able to spend 4 months practicing one combination just to get better at that? That's how martial arts is. So it forces you to delay gratification. It forces you to go into training day in, day out without constantly seeing your progress, without constantly seeing how much better you've gotten. And then one day it all clicks. One day you see how much better you've gotten and you get that gratification. And this teaches you a lot about life. What I've seen in life is that it's the same thing. If I can spend 3 months trying to perfect a technique in the gym, I can sure as hell spend 3 months trying to make videos and trying to grow an audience, which has worked. Because the first 30, 40 videos I made didn't go viral, didn't blow up, they didn't get me any subscribers. And then I made a video, Why Men Need to Learn How to Fight, which blew up, has 20K views, and I got more subscribers, and now I'm getting more of a following. Every video I make gets like 800 to 1,000 views. Some go up, some go down. But still, I'm finally getting that gratification from working so hard for like 6, 7 months, and I didn't see any progress. Well, same in the gym. I didn't see any progress until like 7 months training, 8 months training. And by the way, this wasn't huge progress, but like at least I could finally beat up the average Joe. Not even beat up, at least sparring, I could sort of, handle the average Joe. So fighting has taught me how to delay gratification. Fighting has taught me that not everything comes to you easy and quick, but the good thing about delaying gratification is that when it comes, it's so much better. Number 5, humbling. This has probably been the hardest part to master. In fighting, you have to understand, like in life, there's always a bigger shark. And that's not to say that you should stop or you should like submit and you should be like, okay, everybody's better than me. It's to say that you always need to keep climbing and there's always somebody better than you, which is both horrible because you feel bad and you think it hits your ego, and great because it's what keeps you motivated to keep training. But I've gotten humbled quite a few times. As I said, when I was 3-4 months in, I thought I was the king of the world. I thought I could fight my ass off and I thought I was tough guy, everything. And then I met some actual fighters, like some professional fighters, some people that had just been doing it longer than me, and I realized quickly the levels there is to fighting. I mean, I would get thrown around like a rag doll. I would get punched, like they could do literally anything to me. They could knock me out if they want to. And this really annoyed me. It really felt like I was helpless. Once again, that feeling that I had been running from, the helplessness that I had been running from was coming once again every time I went against somebody that was better than me. And so I had to humble myself. I had to realize that it's okay to be confident and it's great, and you should have unrealistic expectations of where you want to go. But you have to have realistic expectations of where you are. If that makes sense. You have to have unrealistic expectations of where you want to go because you want to go somewhere large, you want to make it big, but you have to have realistic expectations of where you are. You have to know that you're not at the level to be acting like this yet. That is something that I could have saved myself a few months on, but I'm finally understanding it now. There's levels to martial arts, there's levels to life, and that's what keeps you working. That's what keeps you leveling up, because one day you will be at that level. Number 6, losses and overthinking. So I had my first amateur kickboxing fight about, I'd say now it's 4 months ago. You can go back on my channel and check it out. This is how my first fight went, or something like that. And I have the full video on my channel. Spoiler, I lost. It wasn't terrible. I mean, I didn't lose by a landslide, but I did lose. There's no excuses. And when I lost, I haven't fully recovered from it. I'm going to be honest with you. There's something about training so hard for a performance, for like a 6-minute performance, in front of a bunch of people, in front of, my dad was there, my coach, your family, and just losing. And then you start to overthink about your losses. You start to overthink about your failures. You start to think, what if all this training was for nothing? Why should I ever compete again if I have the chance of losing? And this forced me to deal with losses and to understand the psychology behind losing and how to take it well and how to grow from it. I started having thoughts of, should I even fight again? What's the point? I mean, I don't want to go pro, and if I lose, I'm just going to risk being embarrassed. What's the point? And so I was talking with my coach and he said, Jorge, it's great that you want to win, but you need to want to fight. And when you went out there, I didn't see you wanting to fight. You just wanted to win. And I thought about it, and at first I didn't know what he meant, but then I realized the outcome is a whole other thing. If you don't have that passion, if you don't want to truly grab your balls and fight like a man, you're not going to win because you don't want it more than the other person. And second of all, if you, after one loss, and I'm not talking about fighting, I'm talking about any area of life. If after one loss you give up, how many things are you going to try? How many things are you going to be good at? 0. Because every single person, especially successful people, have taken more losses than you've ever even tried. So if you think about the billionaires like Mark Cuban, Jeff Bezos, they've failed more than you've even tried. I want you to think about that. And that's something that I started thinking about. I started comparing myself to professional athletes, like, oh, they don't lose. But I realized that I'd only been training with a coach for 6 months. I'd only been training by myself for about 6 months. So I'd only been training a year in total. And I had to cut myself some slack. The guy I went against was more experienced than me, and he was just a better fighter than me back then. So I had to understand to take that loss, to take that hit to my ego, and to keep going. And now I'm getting back into the rhythm of wanting to compete again because there's nothing quite like competing. It's like exhilarating, it's like a drug. But it took me a long time to overcome that fear of somewhere on an online website, my name and an 0 and 1 or an 0 and 2 on my name because it doesn't really matter. I don't really want to go pro. There's no point in it because it's very hard to make money and you can get brain damage. That's a whole other thing. There's no shame in losing if you tried. Number 7, looking into the mirror. After that fight, as I said, I was in my head a lot. I had to really think about what I wanted to do next with fighting and with life. And this is why I love fighting so much. I think for men, it's like therapy. So when you're lost as a man, some men go to therapy, some men go to drugs and alcohol, some men go to their friends. I personally go to the gym and fight. There's not one thing that fighting hasn't taught me about myself that I don't want to know. It's taught me things that I don't want to know about myself. Fighting is a no bullshit sport. If you're hiding something, fighting will uncover it. All my fears, all my procrastination, all my insecurities were exposed by fighting, and I was forced to face them. I'll give you an example. No man likes to feel fear, right? No man likes to feel helpless. Recently, I met this guy who I was sparring with, and I felt helpless and very, very fearful. He's a bare knuckle boxer, and he's very good martial artist. And against him, I was basically just a punching bag. I couldn't really do anything. And I could literally feel like my brain and my body not acting the way I wanted it to because of fear. And this is something that I hadn't felt in a while, and I hated it. And when I got home, I was overthinking it. But I realized that that's a learning experience and that we've all been there. The guy that I sparred against has been there before too, with the guy that was more experienced than him. And so it gave me the opportunity to look into the mirror and say, okay, I felt fear. I'm not unbreakable. I need to work on this. I need to work on my fear management. I need to be more confident. I need to be more brave. Every single insecurity you have, every single imperfection you have will be exposed through fighting. And it's the best way of self-improvement for me, in my opinion, which is why I made the video of fighting is the new self-improvement. Because self-improvement is just finding out your errors, being honest with yourself, and eliminating them, and creating good habits to eliminate them. Well, that's fighting. Every single thing in fighting you can relate to life. Like being confident. You're going to be a better fighter if you're more confident. You're going to be a better businessman or salesman if you're more confident. Discipline. You're going to be a better fighter if you're disciplined. You're going to be a better businessman. You're going to be a better pizza maker if you're more disciplined. It all translates to life. Which brings me to point number 7, which is wisdom. Now, I'm not saying I'm the grand mage and I have all the wisdom in the world because I'm only 18 and I've only started fighting a year ago. But I have gained some wisdom from life as a young guy that I wouldn't have learned until like 5 years later just because of fighting. I mean, all the stuff that I've just taught you is wisdom. And that some people, some men, don't learn until they're like 25, 30. So in that sense, I've already have a head start. So this is all the stuff that fighting has done for me. Now, I make this in hopes that maybe a young guy, 14, 15, that's watching this, who's been thinking of what to do, who's been lost, who feels the same way that I felt when I was younger, can take this step into finally starting martial arts. And apart from learning how to defend yourself, apart from, being stronger and being able to beat people's ass, which you realize it's not about that at all the stuff that I talked about will be what happens to you. And I promise you, you won't regret starting. The only thing you'll regret is not starting sooner, because there's not a activity that I would rather have done for the past year that has taught me more about life and about myself than martial arts. So if you're watching this, please, please, please start. See you, bro.